We finally know what player housing is going to be like, and before I play the clip, I want you to ask yourself this. When was the last time Blizzard released a feature that felt like it was from old Blizzard? The Blizzard that meant polish. The Blizzard that meant that something was surprising and delightful and industry-defining. Ask yourself that question, and now listen to this clip.
This is version 1 that I got to test of the housing. They've way exceeded expectations by a long, long way. It was really nice that they stopped a lot of the feedback to say, this is great, all the positive, we want the negative. Where are you running into issues? And we gave a lot, especially on like UI interactions, search criteria, all this kind of stuff. We really looked at everything.
Yeah, when is the last time you heard someone talk about Blizzard like that? And you know that Mike is perfectly willing to be critical of them. This is not the Blizzard we've grown used to. I also have a problem. Vercel's V0 and every no-code tool on Earth have empowered a new generation of vibe coders. I've kind of joined them. My editors have actually been making internal tools for our team that previously we'd need an engineer for. There's a problem. A dragon. And that dragon is backend, and my sponsor, Boot.dev, exists to help you slay that dragon. And I'm not even being cheesy. Boot.dev is built by a gamer for fellow gamers, and it fits my weaknesses, right? Coming from C# game dev, mostly in Unity, front-end stuff was kind of like fine and easy to me, honestly, but wiring up databases, dealing with auth, all of that was obscure wizardry. It just isn't really where I had learned. And that's why I swear by Boot.dev. Lane and the team have baked the fun of an RPG, so quests, XP, guild style, Discord, that really is an amazing place, all into a curriculum that's laser focused on you getting serious back-end chops. If you've heard of words like data structures, API, auth flows, algorithms, Docker, if you've heard of those and want to know how to use them and build them, well, yeah, this is actually how. Now, you will build and deploy a server client Pokedex, you'll remake asteroids in Pygame, you'll even tackle job search preparation. And that's the thing with Boot. They don't skip the important stuff. So no more tutorial hell, no pricey bootcamp hustle bullshit, just a structured path that turns your energy to make shit into viable engineering talent. And Boot itself keeps on adding features. You've got the searchable spellbook and constant content drops like TypeScript, which is absolutely huge. And I also have a hack to save you some money. Boot.dev/Bellular, right? Code Bellular gets you 25% off your first purchase. And if you buy the yearly plan, well, 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number. That'll save you the most. And if you don't gel with it, don't worry, there's a no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee. So here's the deal. Last weekend, they did something unusual. They casually grabbed a handful of social-focused creators and a few more hardcores as well, and they brought them to their Boston offices for a playtest. And instead of some carefully controlled media event to farm out content, it was something quite a bit more raw. It was Blizzard asking for feedback, and they were raw enough that they opened up interviews. They name-dropped the games they were taking features from. WildStar, FF14, Valheim, Stardew Valley, a lot of things. Basically, now WoW is determined, because they're late to the party, they have to show up better than everyone else, just like Blizzard used to. Blizzard were a little bit like Apple. They were never first. The whole point is that even if they were late, they would be best. And right now it seems they're off to a real good start. In today's video, I'm going to tell you all the information and also bring together everything we've learned from the interviews so that in one place, you know what's just happened with player housing. There's so much info that it's hard to figure out what the best news is, but perhaps the most shocking is this. Blizzard have been working on this feature literally for years. Now, they wouldn't sadly reveal exactly how long, just that it's been years and years in the making. And it turns out, until they made one major technological breakthrough on the engineering side, they literally thought this would be impossible in the Warcraft engine. But once they had that cracked, they were able to go all in. Okay, next. How about complete freedom to build jumping puzzles and mazes? You actually get that with the build system. Dratnos tried to build some of those in the limited time that he had and really enjoyed it. And the way it works is there's no gravity with placement, but there is full collision for items. And that means you can literally do whatever you want. And how about this? Houses have a 10,000 item limit. FF14's largest limit is 400, and man, I do remember glitching out Halo 3 Forge to make some cool things. This is far beyond that. WoW's is literally 25 times larger than FF14's. And to give you a tangible idea of what that means, Preach said that all of the videos and the screenshots that we've seen so far that you're looking at in this video, that is just one house, and the person building it has only used 2,000 items. Yes, only 2,000. In the test build, they had 10 rooms across 3 levels, but Preach said that rooms can be wherever you want. So if you want a sprawling church, a 6-story jumping puzzle tower, anything, whatever floats your boat, you can do it. Mike sums it up pretty well when he says this operates on TARDIS rules. You know, Doctor Who. The inside doesn't really matter to the outside. As much as that may break some immersion, I think it's worth it in terms of creativity. And let's speak of that, because creativity is going to be limited by assets. And the good news is the asset pool is huge. The word from the event is that Blizzard have changed their asset pipeline. That's how they actually build World of Warcraft. So most assets will be available for housing as soon as they are added to the game. This, I think, is huge. An example would be, say, the next patch. Patch 11.2 is almost certainly going to be themed after the Ethereals. Now, if housing already existed, that would mean that on patch day, you'd be able to start collecting all of the new ethereal items to decorate with. And anything new will be dyeable across multiple channels right off the bat. Now, they do have tons of existing assets in the demo that people could play, but they did say they have to do a pass over all of their old assets to make sure they look okay when rotated. Because, of course, it turns out when players will never see the underside of a rug, then guess what? You don't have to texture the underside of the rug. Just that with how much freedom you have in this system, you would be able to see the underside of the rug. And that means that the housing team has a massive backlog of work to do. Now, if you've spent any time in Final Fantasy XIV housing, you'll know that assets can be combined in more ways than may appear. And here's an example of that. MMORPG.com described the demo they were given by Jay Huang. He's the lead in decorations and a longtime Blizzard asset artist. Now, he made a loft and he put a restaurant in it, right down to being able to make a stovetop out of a metal plate and scaled down barrels such that those would look like burners. And that's the thing that matters the most here. You can scale, rotate, clip things into other things to basically make your own stuff. Just like what we did when we glitched out Halo Forge back in the day. Now, there was also talk about making a functioning library, basically that you could place actual books so that you could interact with the books in your own house's library. And this is all working with dynamic indoor lighting, so if you want to make, say, a dark, cozy little reading corner, you'll be able to do that. And the good news is you'll be able to do all of this when the feature launches, and it's going to launch, they confirmed, between the pre-patch of Midnight and the release of Midnight. So basically, housing is not a Midnight feature, it's a World of Warcraft feature. They have a dedicated team for it, and there's a roadmap that will last years for just the features of housing. Essentially, Blizzard are making big bets here, but this is probably the biggest bet of all. Maybe the largest one they've made in, I don't know, a decade. It seems huge. Now, it wasn't all good news. There are some frustrations. So at launch, you're going to be limited to 1 house per faction per account. So if you've got a dozen alts and you want them all to have their own houses, you're out of luck. And I gotta be real, that does, at first glance, really kind of blow. You'll basically have to make do with individual rooms for your individual alts if that's what you want to do. But even the bad news is kind of good news in a way, because the creators weren't invited there to farm content or just to rub shoulders. Apparently, the devs were pushing back on praise that they got from creators, which is actually quite nice to see. Sort of doing that instead of asking for criticism and feedback. Basically, they talked about UI issues, future ideas that they've got to account for, and any blind spots. And apparently, for how good it is, there was a lot of feedback. It seems that from the creator pool, they got a lot of things that they hadn't thought about supporting and now have actually been able to put on their list. One of those, for example, is basements. They don't have basements, at least not yet, and I suppose if you are used to doing seedy things in Final Fantasy XIV, you'll want a basement. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, they also don't support indoor PvP, but they are thinking about that. And this came up because the MMORPG writer built a full-scale indoor wrestling ring. Not just the ring, but a full stadium, including an entranceway, seating for fans, an announcer's desk, and even pyrotechnics. Yes, pyrotechnics. Pretty awesome. Essentially, the amount of player-generated content that we'll see here between jumping puzzles, mazes, and RP areas, I think is going to be absolutely nuts. If you were, say, a Habbo Hotel player back in the distant past, I think you'll know exactly what I mean. And of course, my brain does light up with opportunities. Take Drive. Drive is pretty cool, but I think we all can agree that having drifting cars in World of Warcraft forever wouldn't really make much thematic sense. It would, spoil the vibe of going around the Sunwell. But if we're going to have user-generated content, as is seen here, just with, say, jumping puzzles, how far could Blizzard take that? I mean, in the games industry right now, user-generated content is the big hot trend, and certainly as a kid who grew up playing the likes of Fat Kid and the various other zombies and custom Halo maps, that does definitely tickle my imagination. And more than anything, this is what I'm really struck with here, right? And this is more important than really any game detail. It's the approach. This is Blizzard acting like they are hungry. A Blizzard that doesn't seem to think that it knows better. This kind of feels like a different type of Blizzard, and maybe that makes sense. This is a feature developed over years that's kind of been in its own development track. Basically, it seems they understand that housing makes or breaks the future of WoW, so they're putting a lot on the line, and they're actually respecting what that means. And as someone who spent a decade being frustrated that Blizzard often can feel almost unimpeachable, like they always have it right, that's really good to see. I love to see them hungry and actually cooking. To be clear, this is way better than I thought this feature would be. I just didn't think that some of this would be possible in their engine, like at scale, amongst the whole player base. Now, there are things they weren't ready to talk about, and one of those was neighborhoods, but they did talk about what they want from it, which basically is the social fabric. Here's how that is. Neighborhoods are going to support around 50 houses, and people like, say, Esfand and Preach were begging for features to let them run private events or even ticketed events in neighborhoods. Now, Blizzard's aim for neighborhoods is for them to be proper places where people can hang out, decorate together, and get to know each other in a way that you can't really do in-game right now. But if, like me, you played during Warlords of Draenor, well, you're probably thinking about player utility. You're probably thinking about garrisons. Garrisons prove that putting professions, auctions, and everything you could possibly need into the player's own private instance, that completely killed the sense of world in World of Warcraft and the social aspects. So Blizzard are being very, very careful about making sure people don't completely self-isolate like they did back when garrisons were a thing. So, we're probably going to hear more about all of this stuff in the coming months, but for now, I actually think this is insanely exciting. I mean, to have someone like Preach, who fell in love with FF14's housing and events, and, who's been pretty critical of Blizzard-related things lately, for that to remind him of the old Blizzard, that's cool. I mean, that's the old Blizzard that made things better than anyone else. Back when it was essentially an untouchable force in the industry. This cannot come to the game soon enough, but of course, we're going to have to wait. So let's get back to the other news. Season 2 Turbo Boost is live, so if you haven't logged in this week, make sure to hop in and kill a few bosses or run a few Mythic Pluses in order to get your Puzzling Cartel chips. With that, you'll actually be able to get a free item of your choice this week. Plus, if you've got golden crests, you can recraft your craft gear to be way stronger, and you can upgrade your existing gear beyond the current limits. Well, beyond the current limits as of like 2 weeks ago. Basically, this is the perfect time to come back and take another swing at Keystone Legend, or say soloing the Underpin, or anything else that you've not sorted out. With that said then, let's round off what to do this week and what's happening in-game. So, good news. This week, we actually get the full 11.1.5 patch with horrific visions. That means you'll be able to enjoy some of BFA's best content from here in Donegal. You'll be able to work towards getting a ton of new achievements, tons of gear, and the old corruptions are back as head enchants. It's honestly all pretty sick. Hopefully it doesn't break when it goes live. And even if you've got bad memories of the visions from BFA because of all the surrounding nonsense, well, at least based on PTR, they're in a really, really good place, and it's real fun. Unfortunately, though, that does mean it's the end of the Winds of Mysterious Fortune event, so I hope you farmed out a lot of those XP pots, or at least got some of your alts a little bit to where you want them. There are other things, though. We'll be rolling out of Classic Time Walking and into the Dungeon events, so that's time for you to do a quick few mythics for a box of gear. And coming in from last week, we'll be getting another full spark, but no new catalyst charge, though at this point, you probably don't need many more catalyst charges. And that's basically it. There's not a huge amount of news this week, but there's a lot going on, and it won't be long until patch 11.2 hits us like a ton of bricks. Like, since PAX East covered Legion Remix this week, and of course we got the housing stuff, that likely means that Summer Games Fest is probably Blizzard's and Xbox's plan to reveal the grand finale of World Soul Saga Part 1, which is of course patch 11.2, which currently we expect will be set on the broken ethereal homeworld of Koresh. And you can learn all the background lore you need to actually enjoy that in this video next.